Ladies and gentlemen, thrilled to have you here for another epic debate. This is going to be a good one, folks. We're thrilled for it, and we're thrilled you're here. Want to let you know. Modern Day Debate is a neutral platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. I'm your host, James, and we want to let you know, no matter what walk of life you are from, folks, we are thrilled to have you here. Christian, atheist, agnostic, all the different views, folks. We're really glad that you are with us tonight. And so, with that, want to let you know a couple of things. One, in less than a week, we are thrilled, as you can see right here on this promo poster, we are thrilled. Matt Dillahunty will be returning to Modern Day Debate to debate Samuel Nassan on whether or not Jesus fulfilled prophecies from the Old Testament. So that is going to be an epic one. And folks, have to let you know, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss that one live. It's going to be an epic Friday night. And so really excited for that. Also, what we're going to do for tonight's debate is it's fairly flexible, kind of easy going. So we are going to have the affirmative going first. That is Sidharth and Arjuna, aka Theology Unleashed. And then after their openings, which is about 12 minutes from each side, split by the two speakers on each side, then we will have Ask Yourself and Jack do their openings, followed by open conversation. After that, Q&A. So if you happen to have a question, feel free to fire it in the old live chat and tag me with @ModernDayDebate. That way I can see every question and get it into that Q&A list. So we are going to introduce our guests. We're thrilled to have them here. And so, guys, we're pumped for this one. This is going to be a blast. So we will start with Ask Yourself. Glad to have you here. What can people expect to find at your link in the description, Ask Yourself? Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, no problem. You're a great hype man, James. Well, yeah, my link, I guess, is down below. What do they find there? Yeah, like philosophy content. A lot of it's about veganism. I touch on some other topics.
You got it. Well, thanks so much. And Jack, I am pumped to have you. This is going to be epic. So if you could share just a little bit about yourself. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Yeah, I done some debates on YouTube and on Discord on philosophy and economics, which I study informally. So that's about it.
Awesome. Well, we're pumped for having you here tonight. And also, Sidharth, glad to have you back. What can people expect to find at your link? And thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, James, one more time for being such a wonderful host. I have shared the link for my website where I have a URL to my book and a couple of academic articles which I've written on the subject of science and religion. And I look forward to this debate.
You got it. Thank you very much. And Arjuna, pumped to have you here, also known as Theology Unleashed. What can people expect to find at your link in the description?
So my link at my YouTube channel, I host debates on there, and I also put out, when I have time, videos arguing various topics on philosophy of religion. One thing I like to go after is absurd versions of Christianity and whatnot. I argue for what I take to be a more philosophically coherent theology, which is more inclusive and found in the Chaitanya Vaishnava tradition, aka Hare Krishna.
You got it. Well, we're thrilled to have you here as well, and want to let you know, folks, all of our guests are linked in the description, and that includes if you're listening via podcast. We're pumped, you guys. We've been super encouraged that people have been downloading the Modern Day Debate podcast. Encourage you, pull out your phone, find your favorite podcast app, and find Modern Day Debate, as it's been just super encouraging, like I said, that people have been giving positive ratings as well. So thanks, everybody, for your support. And if you're listening via podcast, all of our guests are linked in that description as well. And so no matter where you're listening, you can access their links. And with that, we are very excited to jump into this debate. So thank you, gentlemen. We are going to kick it over to Sidharth and Arjuna for it's like a flexible 12-minute or so opening that they'll split amongst each other. And thank you guys for being here. The floor is all yours.
Sidharth, you want to give your arguments?
Yes, give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So thank you, my dear friends, for this wonderful opening, and thank you for the opportunity to have a good conversation with thoughtful people like Ask Yourself, Jake, Arjuna. So I would like to begin my talk or my presentation with this amazing picture you can see on the screen. I'm not sure if many of you know the history behind this picture. Almost a century ago, this picture was taken by Sir Arthur Eddington, and it changed the course of history. It changed the course of history, it changed the course of how we perceive science. Why? Because in early 1900s, Einstein had proposed theory of general relativity. And when he had proposed that, there were many questions. People were not interested in accepting Newtonian idea. People were not interested in throwing the Newtonian idea of forces. But when Einstein came and said that gravity is just a distortion of space and time, people questioned him. Only a couple of decades later, or we can say a decade later, after he proposed his theory, it was vindicated by this picture. This picture was taken by Sir Arthur Eddington in 1919 when he showed that the light is, gets moved due to the space and time distortion. Thus, this was a moving point in the history of science. And we have a similar moving point right now with us in our today's presentation. So today I'm presenting, Does God Exist? I'm myself a computer scientist from the University of Michigan. I work as a researcher, a data scientist and a researcher in Michigan. And that's my email ID if you have any questions. So here's the summary of my argument. I'm going to talk about an argument based on Puranas. What are Puranas? Puranas are encyclopedic texts written thousands of years ago. And they describe history, religion, science, sociology, a bunch of different things. Now, as a Hare Krishna practitioner, we take Puranas as source of genuine knowledge. However, such faith in Puranas is questioned by modern, people, or scientific minds, or you can say, current generation of people, the modern generation. In my presentation, I'm going to show the second point, which is that the Puranas have been vindicated by recent scientific discoveries. And thus, I will establish that Puranas are genuine source of knowledge. And Puranas unequivocally state that God exists. So that would be my summary. That's my summary, of my argument. First of all, epistemologies. So broadly, let's divide epistemologies into two types. One is ascending, other is descending. What is ascending epistemology? Based on empiricism and rationalism, or inductive methods. And what is descending? Descending is accepting knowledge coming from revealed by God, and God revealed it to sages and coming down to us. So that is Puranas and Vedas, whereas ascending knowledge is modern science. So given any kind of knowledge which we have, both the epistemologies encourage the person who has got the knowledge to verify it. Now, there can be subjective methods and objective methods. So in the case of Puranas, which we're trying to establish as a genuine source of knowledge, there is subjective verification, objective verification. What is subjective verification? Puranas state that if you follow this lifestyle, which is given in the Puranas, which means having God as a center part of your life, then you'll be able to clean your heart of envy and anger, which are very difficult problems to get relieved of. And it will lead you to a sense of happiness, which you can't find materially. Some of the Puranic techniques or the Vedic techniques are yoga, Ayurveda, which I'm sure many of you have tried. However, these are more subjective methods. They can't be really measured in the lab. How much anger was reduced in your case? How much envy did you get rid of? There's no scale for it. So, given with this, we have a tough task. We have to come up with some kind of objective verification. And since we're making such an extraordinary claim that 1,000-year-old text or a few thousand-year-old text has, it's a genuine source of knowledge, we have to come up with some extraordinary evidence to support such an extraordinary claim, as Carl Sagan said it. So I'm going to talk about 3 data points. My first data point is age of the universe. So according to the Puranas, the universe is 13.819 billion years old. What about modern science? Well, modern science, it works inductively. So over the last 100 years, or you can say 200 years, it has made progress. Initially, it started with the opinion that the universe is eternal because they wanted to avoid God. However, the current opinion, thanks to cosmic microwave background radiation, is 13.801 billion years. So what took scientists last 100 years or 200 years is plainly stated in the Puranas. The difference between two values is only 0.1%. That's data point 1. Number 2, age of the sun. So age of the sun is a problem that can be solved by studying the radioactive properties of the oldest rocks that have been found in the solar system. What is the Puranic value? 4.563. What is the scientific value? 4.567. The difference, 0.08%. Next, Earth's greatest mass extinction. The scientists state that our Earth has gone through many periods of extinctions, mass extinctions. However, the biggest mass extinction, according to the scientists, was 251.9 million years ago. That was the end Permian mass extinction. What about the Puranas? The Puranas state that the biggest mass extinction in the current, in this cycle of the solar system happened 251.2 million years ago. The difference is 0.3%. Now, all these three data points I have published in a peer-reviewed journal called European Journal of Science and Theology, where I established the analysis behind it. Because if you look on Wikipedia, you won't find such dates. Because as I said, I'm a data scientist and a researcher. So this is something which I discovered through my study and work on the ancient Sanskrit literature. Now, somebody may say, hey, maybe those sages, they guessed it. The numbers which you can find in the Puranas and Vedas go up to 10 to the power 62. They could have chosen any number. So the probability that they got this one date correctly is roughly 1 over 10 to the 62, or in that range, that kind of around that number. What is the probability that they got these three dates accurately? 10 to the 186. Again, in that range. Somebody may say 170, somebody may say 180 if they want to, create a bigger group of guesses. Then these are only the three data points. In my book, which is an expanded version of my paper, I discuss dozens such data points. So summarizing, we have two epistemologies of knowing the world around us. One is the ascending epistemology, second is descending epistemology. What is the ascending epistemology? Modern science. What is the descending? It's Puranas and Vedas, knowledge coming from sages, from God. So ascending epistemology is inaccurate by design. It needs to be constantly updated based on the data which we observe outside. Sometimes we have Newtonian theory of gravity, then we have Einstein's theory of gravity, and in future there are some other candidates which want to replace even Einstein. The world doesn't end. On the other side, we just show how Puranas are a genuine source of knowledge. Of course, modern science doesn't need to vindicate Puranas. However, here for people who have faith in modern science, we have provided evidence so that they can have faith in the Puranas or have confidence in the Puranas as genuine source of knowledge. Now, Puranas state clearly that God exists. Ascending knowledge, or modern science says, hey, we don't know if God exists or not. I would like to end with a quick short story of Semmelweis. In 1847, he was the one who should be credited for discovering the science behind washing the hands. However, for 20 years, his opinion was rejected. He was ridiculed and people laughed at him. So science is a slow process. In this slow process of denying God or going against the recommendations given the Puranas for lifestyle, saying in the name of science, we may lose many lives. And that's what's happening right now. We have so much pollution, so many mental health problems. Why? Because we don't have God in the picture. So I recommend that we use whatever time we have left in our lifetime and make God again part of our life. Thank you. I will let Arjuna continue the presentation.
All right. So I was going to talk about two other lines of evidence. Given the time, I'll probably restrict it to one. So the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam give a particular ontology of the soul. They talk of the soul, the body as like a machine. The soul enters into it and travels to another body. So this is a prediction, you could say. And then we have various kinds of evidence which confirm that, such as near-death experiences. There's various arguments from philosophy of mind. And we have the evidence for reincarnation, which has been advanced by Dr. Ian Stevenson, and the work has continued to this day. So Dr. Ian Stevenson, he collected over 2,600 cases of past life memories, of which 65 detailed reports have been published. He wrote several books. So one example of a case is Kumkum. She remembered a past life in a village called Darbhanga, which was quite small. She named the location, the portion of the village that she lived in, and she was able to correctly recall the fact that her grandson's name, the town where her father lived, and personal details such as having an iron safe at home, a sword hanging near the cot where she slept, and a pet snake that she fed milk to. So these details were later confirmed when they were able to identify a person who lived in the village she described that matched these details. That's just one example. There's many such cases. So he gave mathematical strength to his findings by processing the data. One way he did that was he gave evidence for birthmarks. So he divided human body into 160 boxes, each 10 centimeter squares. That's what it would be on an average size adult. So there's a chance of 160 of a birthmark matching a wound, which makes a chance of 1 in 25,000 of 2 birthmarks matching a wound. So he had 18 cases in which a child remembers a death by gunfire and has 2 birthmarks corresponding to the bullet's point of entry and exit. In one of these cases, the second birthmark was predicted by Stevenson and found under the child's hair when they looked for it after he suggested that they would find one. And these birthmarks, they match too. So just like bullet entry and exit wounds, they have the first one's small and the exit wound is larger and more, it's a different shape than the entry wound. These birthmarks match that pattern. And there was also phobias and behaviors and mentalities that carried over. So in a test batch of 387 children who claimed to remember previous life, 141 of them had phobias that nearly always corresponded to the exact mode of death documented for the previous identity and child recalled. And Dr. Ian Stevenson was not some quack job. He worked for the University of Virginia. He had a stellar academic record, and he carried this work out to a high standard. Academic standard, and his critics noted that he put things into his presentations, and when he collected data, he put things in there which could be used to be skeptical of them. So he wasn't just trying to make a compelling case; he was a real scientist, just trying to see where the evidence led. So if we look at different ways we could analyze the data, his critics have offered various types of objections, and usually they're just sort of the typical skeptical rhetoric. Like, it's just, fertile imaginations and suggestions, and, they're more common in places where reincarnation is believed. But there's various ways we can analyze to separate out which of these is the more accurate interpretation. So Dr. Ian Stevenson was quite conservative. He didn't think we can prove reincarnation is true based on this. He just, he called one of his books 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation. But nonetheless, we can conclude that this is the best interpretation. So to analyze it and see, if reincarnation is true, what would we expect to find versus if the skeptical story, or one of the skeptical stories were true, what would we expect to find? So there's 3 or 4 things we can look at. So to find, 3 or 4 different types of evidence all corresponding, it then becomes a better explanation to have the one explanation which explains it all, rather than to have 3 or 4 things which are all just coincidences. So to have the birthmarks, to have behaviors and phobias all match, and then memories which are proven to be veridical, meaning we can actually go and find that the things these childs are remembering are accurate. And the other thing a skeptic might say is, so he avoided doing cases of hypnosis because suggestion can be powerful and people can imagine remembering stuff. He liked cases where children spontaneously remembered something, and then he would investigate those. The best cases would be ones where he was able to interview the child very early on, before any contact had been made with the family of the deceased. And he has several cases like that. But one way they analyze to see if it's just suggestion, and later they contact the family and gain more information, and that's fed to the child, and the child starts reciting the information which they receive through ordinary methods. We can rule that out by analyzing the data for. So if that was the case, then the case should become stronger over time as the child hears more about the deceased person who they're claiming to have been in their past life. Their story should get stronger. But what actually happens is the stories don't get stronger along that vector. They actually get weaker over time as the child's memory fades. And most of these children forget them by around the age of 7. There's few cases, Gopal Sharma's one case where the boy remembered it much longer. I can't remember the age. He might have been 19 when Dr. Ian Stevenson last spoke to him. He still remembered the past life, and he wished he didn't. So I'll leave it there for that. There's near-death experiences One famous case is Maria. She died of cardiac arrest while she was clinically dead. She wandered around the hospital building, disembodied. She saw a shoe on the roof of the building, which was later confirmed to be there. And it's described that she'd come face to face with a tennis shoe poised on the window ledge, and there's no explanation for how she could have seen it. It was late at night when she came in. She spotted details on the shoe that you couldn't actually see from inside the building. You would have had to been floating around near the shoe outside the building to see it. So that's one case. And then the other line of argument I was going to give, but I think I'll drop it for this time, was from fine tuning. So fine tuning is evidence for intelligent design, for God, because of inference to the best hypothesis. Of course, it doesn't get us, a personal God necessarily, but it does get us an intelligent creator.
30 more seconds.
And 4 seconds. So, yeah, anyway, I guess I'll just leave it there. It's an inference to the best hypothesis. We can discuss that later if they want to push back on it.
You got it. So thank you very much, Sidharth and Arjuna. We went a little bit over the opening, but like I said, it's flexible, so that's totally okay, and we'll do the same for Ask Yourself and Jack. Thanks so much, Ask Yourself and Jack, for being here as well. The floor is all yours for your opening.
Well, I mean, I invited you here, Jack. Do you want to set the direction?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't really have much of an opening. It's more because really what I would need to do is try to understand the nature of the hypothesis and the structure of the inference to that hypothesis, right? I take it that's the basic framework that you guys have set up, is that you're trying to make some kind of explanatory inference from some phenomena that are observed, right, to some posited explanation. But I'm just not clear on what that explanation is, right? Like, what is the explanatory hypothesis in question, right? So I'm not really, what I would really like to do in most cases is grant the empirical facts, right? I mean, this would typically be my strategy in debates, say, with Christians about the resurrection, right? Is to just grant that Jesus rose from the dead rather than engage in exegetical, historical and empirical debates about whether that really happened, right? And see whether there really is an inference from that fact to the existence of God or the truth of Christianity or what have you. Because I think there's usually going to be conceptual issues that will save a lot of time and difficulty to focus on to get to the heart of the matter without having to dispute the empirical facts, right? So so I don't really know exactly what the explanatory hypothesis is, right? And so that's one issue. I mean, the one thing that I actually know something about, or that I've debated on before, is fine tuning, right? I don't really know. I mean, I haven't spent a lot of time talking about reincarnation and nor about sort of predictions about things like the age of the universe or the age of the sun and the Puranas, right? So I don't actually know anything about that. In the case of fine tuning, I have never really understood how there's an inference, how there's a good inference to an intelligent designer as an explanation for that data. And so that's something I could talk about with a little bit more experience, if you want to lay that out at some point. So I don't really have much to say to dispute anything that you've said. I'm prepared, at least for the moment, to grant all the empirical claims as being true. And I'm just sort of wondering I want to get some clarity on what the hypothesis is and what the inferential structure is. So you can, Isaac, if you want to pick up from there, I can stop.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I think that I'm fine with that kind of approach. And that's also what I'm inclined towards, being someone who hasn't spent time studying things like, I don't know, like what are we talking about? Like cosmology or like any of that kind of stuff, the age of the earth or like the historicity of Jesus, any of although we're not talking of Christians here, but any of that kind of empirical stuff, I don't know a whole lot about. So I'm also inclined to just grant the empirics and see if just granting that they're able to give an argument that will get to the conclusion that God exists. So, and there's no point in me just repeating a lot of what Jack just said. So why don't we just hop into it? Like, could we maybe clarify what exactly the inference is? And you guys gave a few, so let's sort of like select one to focus on. I think that would be a good idea. Instead of we don't want to be hopping around between.
Fine tuning is a good one for me if you guys are open to that, because I've talked about that before. But it could be any of them.
You got it. We'll jump into the open discussion then. Thank you very much. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Fine-tuning's been done a lot, so maybe we'll do the original stuff and stick to the reincarnation and cosmic stuff. We can do fine-tuning another day. Obviously, we're tight on time.
Okay.
The inference would be we could call the knowledge which is proved by reincarnation by Dr. Ian Stevenson's work and by the cosmic accuracies found in the Puranas, we could call them predictions. So just like Einstein predicted that we would measure a curvature to the light as it traveled around the sun, and they proved that, that was taken as evidence because it was a prediction made by the theory. It's not that every little detail of general relativity has been proven. It's just that key features of it have been proven and the rest of it is inferred based on that. So the inference would be that the features which we can very empirically verify have proven accurate. Therefore, it's sensible to conclude that the rest of it would also be true. So that's one line of argument.
Well, let's stop there because I'm just not understanding what is the explanatory hypothesis in question, and how do you derive this specific prediction from that?
Well, there's no other way for these ancients to have I'll let Sidharth go, but there's no other way for these ancients to have had this knowledge. They didn't have the scientific instruments. Yeah, I'll let Sidharth go.
So as I started my presentation, I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation that there are various ways to get knowledge. There is empirical way, which is I call it as ascending method or the inductive method, or the other one, which is we accept knowledge as it is stated in the Vedas or Puranas. Now, presently, I'm sure we will agree that we have confidence in the empirical method. And I was trying to bring the same confidence in the Puranas and Vedas. Now, to build that confidence, we shared this empirical data because people have faith or trust in the empirical data. And since the claim which you made that the Puranas are genuine source of knowledge or authentic source of knowledge is very extraordinary claim, we try to back it up with the evidence which is extraordinary in nature. By extraordinary, I mean that it can't be a fluke or a guess. And it is not post hoc, which it has been done. It is stated in the Puranas for thousands of years. Does that make sense, Jacob?
Not really, because I'm not clear on what the explanans is. So that's why I'm trying to get focused on. I'm trying to understand what is it that you're claiming explains these phenomena. What is that explanatory hypothesis? And how do you derive a prediction from positing that explanatory entity or set of facts, whatever it is? How do you generate a prediction of the unexplained phenomena in question?
It might just be worth focusing on the first. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, Jack, but just for simplicity's sake, maybe first let's just focus on the initial question there, which is just what exactly is the explanatory hypothesis?
Yeah, what is it that we're trying to infer to from the data?
Well, the hypothesis is that the Puranas are authentic source of knowledge.
What exactly does it mean to say that the Puranas are an authentic source of knowledge?
Well, okay, let me break it down. So, like currently, suppose if you want to see something in the sky, you go and visit a say Hubble's telescope, wherever they have their observatory, you go there and you trust it that when you're seeing through the that telescope, you're seeing the stars accurately. It's not that the instrument is defective, but what you are seeing through the instrument, of all the instrument could be defective, but you have confidence that these scientists who have worked very hard, they have put so much hard labor. This instrument is giving me correct form of knowledge. What I'm seeing there through my eyes, in the sky, is not some movie which has been put into the telescope. Somebody's trying to cheat me, but actually I'm really seeing the sky. So there are different ways of gaining knowledge. So one way of gaining knowledge is, say, telescope, by which you're gaining knowledge of the world. And what I'm proposing here in our presentation, that the Puranas are a perfect way of gaining knowledge, as good as a telescope, which gives you a vision of the sky. Does that make sense? I mean, I want to say one more thing. See, Jacob, you are a philosopher. So the terms which you use, you have to a little bit explain those terms also in sometimes use some easy words, because I'm a computer scientist. I don't usually come across terms like the terms you use in your papers or scholarly papers. So I would appreciate if you can always use simpler terms for whenever you're asking questions. Thank you.
A point of process here might just be if a word is uttered that you don't know the meaning of, just feel free to interject, because we don't have any interest in saying something you don't understand, right? So if you hear a word and you don't know what it means, just interrupt and ask. It's fine, and we'll do the same. Sure.
Thank you, Isaac. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And I don't want to cramp Jack's style here if he's got something to say, but it's not. I assume, Jack, when you ask for the explanatory hypothesis, you're looking for what explains the given phenomenon we're talking about here, whether it's what we're talking about, like the age of the universe or whatever the empirical claim is. You're looking for what explains that, right?
Yes, that's right.
And so what explains the claim that the age of the universe is stated like some number in the Puranas? Is that the question?
Yeah, so the idea is that there's a mystery as to how this kind of knowledge could have been had without access to modern scientific techniques and so on, right? I take it that's the basic idea, is that it's some mystery as to how this could be, if it's not taken to be a coincidence, right? Because presumably the idea is that that's somehow improbable, that it's a coincidence. Question is, what explains this fact, right?
Okay.
And that's what I'm trying to understand. What is it that you're inferring to? But it sounds like what the claim in question is, that you're trying to, well, I'm not sure whether you and Arjuna are actually presenting arguments for the same thesis exactly. I mean, I realize you probably have the same beliefs, at least, with regard to your religious perspective or something like that. But it sounds like what you're saying is that what you're trying to prove is that the Puranas are reliable or something like that, which is a little bit different than maybe an explanatory hypothesis in the ordinary.
Yeah, could that be, Jack, you cut out. Are you still speaking, or?
No, I was done. I was saying that it's a little different from an explanatory hypothesis in the ordinary sense, right? There's a question. You could phrase the problem as, there's a question: are the Puranas reliable? And then we look to see if, in every case, we can, whatever propositions we interpret as being stated by those texts. We can look for corroborating evidence. And so maybe the idea is that if we can find corroborating every evidence in every case, then we ought to trust the other statements that are in the text that we don't have a way of corroborating. I wonder if that's sort of the basic idea.
That's what I took it to be. I took the argument to be something like, if the Puranas are reliable and the Puranas claim that God exists, then God exists. The Puranas are reliable. The Puranas claim that God exists. Therefore, God exists. I assume that was the inference. Is that right, Sidharth?
You're muted, Sidharth.
Yes.
Okay. So I think presumably we're not going to question the second and third premise there, that the Puranas state God exists. Well, I guess depending what we mean by reliable, maybe that does need to be challenged. But the first premise seems suspect. It's not clear to me. It's not clear to me why I would accept that. I'm a bit cautious to go too far from the line of reasoning that you're trying to press, Jack. Like, I guess it depends what road we want to go down here. Do we want to go down the road of like looking at that argument and examining the premises, or are you wanting to go somewhere else here?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities. I'm not really sure what the best way to go is. See, sometimes, one analog in debates with Christians who use like the minimal facts argument, facts about the resurrection to argue for the existence of God, is that we ought to infer that Jesus is who he said he was, the Son of God, because he was able.
You cut out because he was. Not hearing you there, Jack. Am I coming through? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, he's cut out.
Okay, well, not sure what to say to that. Feel free to cut in whenever you're back. Pardon?
To correctly predict seamless events, right?
Jack, we missed most of that. We missed most of that there. Could you just say that again, Jack? You cut out.
Sorry, yeah, I think I lost my connection for a second. So there's an analog, it seems to me, with a certain argument that's popular in Christian apologetics, the minimal facts argument. There.
Okay. It sounds like Jack might be having some technical
kind of argument that
Jack, I hate
we
to
ought to. All right, give me a second Wi-Fi so that you can hear me better.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I can talk till Jack comes back. I guess where I'm at is I don't understand why we would accept the first premise of the argument. Is there an argument for that first premise, that if the Puranas are reliable, and they state, well, reliable, I guess if we say reliable, it's going to beg the question. If we say everything in the are you saying that the Puranas are a 100% reliable source of information?
Oh, you're muted again. Yeah.
Yeah. What we are claiming is that whatever parts of the Puranas are testable, those are 100% reliable. But there are parts of Puranas which can't be tested. Just like in the theory of relativity, there are parts of it which cannot be tested because they correspond to higher dimensions. Like, can you really see distortion of space and time? I don't think so. It's not visible because to our eyes.
There might be a weird analogy going on there, though, because if those other things are somehow entailed by relativity, that would be distinct from if, Einstein just included some other statement in his thesis, I guess, that wasn't directly connected to relativity. He just threw in and unicorns exist, right? You might,
Yeah.
because you don't want to make an analogy to a case where some other things are entailed by.
Yes. So in this
I'm
case,
hearing a lot of background noise. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'm hearing that too.
So-
Does anybody have anything like music? I don't know if that's music.
James, you're the only one lit up right now.
No, no. Actually, I'm right next to a big festival going on. I'm trying to. It'll be only for next 5 minutes, so I'm trying to, speak into the mic, and please, you have to tolerate. Or maybe Arjun can speak for a few minutes. I can be on mute for a few minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess that. Well, I was asking about that first premise, and again, I know Jack was trying to talk, so just feel free to cut in whenever you're back. But I was asking about the first premise where we say, if the Puranas are reliable and they say God exists, then God exists, kind of like an implication, like P and Q implies R. I guess that one thing that came to my mind, because I'm doubtful of that premise, right? But then one thing that came to my mind is that if we're just starting from the assumption that everything they say is correct, then it's going to be basically like a question begging argument, because we're starting from that position, right? And when I said, are we saying that everything in there is correct? It sounded like Sidharth was responding by saying, well, there's some claims in there that are testable, and those are correct. And then there's also other claims in there that aren't testable, but we ought to accept those because they're I don't know, they're kind of showing up in the same space as the ones that we've tested that seem correct. And he drew an analogy to Einstein's theory of relativity, and said that we could test certain elements of that theory and not others, but we accept the ones we couldn't test because the ones that we could test turned out to be true. And
Right.
I drew a bit of a disanalogy there, because in one case, it seems like you're talking about entailments of a tested theory. In the other case, it sounds like you're talking about a tacked on claim where it's not obvious how it's entailed by the things we have tested.
Right. Like we might want to posit that there was a means by which let's say we grant that what the Puranas predict or state that we've been able to corroborate is correct, and we think that it's not a coincidence, right? So we think that they had some means to acquire this knowledge. They had access to information that we don't have access to that allowed them to acquire this knowledge, right? Now, presumably we don't know what that is, what that means is, but I guess there's a question as to why we would think that those abilities, right, would also give them the ability to make other claims that we can't necessarily independently verify, right? So if they claim, well, God exists, right? And I mean, that's what it means to say that God exists is going to be a problem in itself. But putting that aside, right, we might just ask, well, how could they know that, right? And I take it that you're just saying, well, given that they were reliable on these other things, we ought to believe that they would have the means to know that as well. I think that Isaac is just sort of saying, and I agree with this, why would we sign on to that, right?
We get the argument.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, you could call it a logical entailment if we claim, if it becomes apparent that there's no other explanation how this knowledge could have got there. So they didn't have telescopes, they didn't have other methods of getting it. So it then becomes an entailment to, one possible explanation is divine revelation. Right? What would the alternative explanation be? In order for that not to be entailed, you'd have to have a competing hypothesis that was a better explanation.
Oh no, okay. So there's problems with what you're doing there. So you don't just get to assert something's a logical entailment. You'd have to show that. And I guess it sounded also like you said that your theory, just like we start from the position that's correct, unless something else is shown to be correct. So maybe you just claim kind of like that, but that seems sketchy. That just seems like, why would I be motivated to start from the position that your theory is correct if you don't give us some kind of reason to?
Well, I mean, you can do that as a working hypothesis. I wasn't saying assume it's true. saying, if it's true, what would we expect to find, kind of thing, so treating it like a working hypothesis is fine. And then, you take a theory, behave as if it's true and see what kind of results you get by analyzing through that light. And if that doesn't work, then you try a different hypothesis.
But when you talk about a logical entailment, do you think that it somehow follows from the universe being a certain age, or whatever exactly the empirical claim is that turns out to be correct that's made in the Puranas? Do you think that it somehow follows from that God exists? Because if you think there's an entailment there, you have to show it.
So one thing is that, that the Puranas, just want to give you some background information here. Now, Puranas don't just state these facts about age of the universe or age of the sun, just like plain, some like extra chapters of their book. It is part of the whole theology, which is the whole accounts of history, which are given in the Puranas. So Puranas are talking about, personalities like Brahma who are managing the cosmic world. And if the Puranas posit that it's a higher dimensional world from where they control or from where they manage the world around us. And as part of explaining the accounts of Brahma, they are talking about his lifetime and how and when he created the sun, or how when he, took part in that work. So just as you said, like in Einstein's theory of relativity, it's not that we can just add in another statement saying, hey, unicorns exist. And then because Einstein's theory of relativity works and because it says in the same paper unicorn exists, so we'll accept unicorns exist, because it has to be connected to the model. So the model which is there in the Puranas, that model itself states, or God is part of that model, and that model also gives the age of the, because the Puranas themselves are like a you can say very very much like interconnected account of stories, and as part of those accounts we hear these numbers. Does that make sense?
I think I see the.
No, so go ahead, Isaac.
No, that's okay. You go for it. I invited you here. I want to give you a chance to talk. So yeah.
Well, see, I'm still a little bit confused by the inference, right? So the idea is something like God would have God, presumably by God, do you mean some being that is all-knowing or something like that? And so given that he's all-knowing, he would have the capacity to know these facts. And so given that we don't have, like, say, a naturalistic explanation for how these facts could have been known, it's therefore reasonable to assume that...
Jack, can you repeat one more time? I think I lost you one more time. Can you say one more time your last couple of sentences?
No problem, yeah. So it sounds to me like the inference may be something like this, that we don't have a naturalistic explanation for how they could have known this, but an all-knowing supernatural being would have that knowledge and would be in a position to tell these people these things, presumably like the human authors of the Puranas, if that's who you think wrote those scriptures. And so that's therefore a better explanation than any possible naturalistic explanation that we don't even have. Is that the idea?
That is secondary. The first and the primary point I'm trying to drive home is that before we look up for other possible alternative explanations for this data, we should look at the point that the Puranas are a way of gaining knowledge which is reliable. So just like we depend.
Oh, you cut out. You went on mute.
I heard just like we do. Well, I mean,
okay, sorry. So
sorry about that. That was my fault. I was trying to. I muted the wrong person because I heard background noise. Forgive me for that. Go ahead.
Yeah. No problem. I know, James, you're trying to be a really good host there. You're trying to make sure that everybody has a really good experience. So no problem. So going back to the point, I was saying that the primary point we're trying to bring home here is that the Puranas are providing a source of knowledge which is reliable, and we don't necessarily need to look into methods like induction or empiricism or rationalism for and providing an explanation for what is there in the Puranas. The Puranas are stating something, and those people who have, trust in the empiric method, they can see the Puranas make these claims, which are, extraordinary claims. They are novel, testable, you can say statements which are found in the Puranas, which have been found to be true by the modern scientists. And thus, the Puranas should be accepted as a source of knowledge, as a reliable source of knowledge. That is the primary point. And the secondary point, which Jack was talking about, which is that, hey, maybe we can go the other route, that there is no, natural explanation for the data found in the Puranas. That's a secondary point. We can take that reasoning also, but that is secondary.
It's just that horn in the background.
Yeah, so that sounds like we're going back to the original sort of issue, which was this question that it seemed like the thesis that at least you were trying to defend was the idea that we ought to rely on the Puranas as a source of knowledge, right? So I take it that, but again, that just sort of raises the question, are you just saying that because some things in it are true, the things that we've been able to corroborate independently, we therefore should think that the rest of it is true? The things that we aren't able to corroborate.
Well, we can call it, I don't know if Sid's trying to talk, he's on mute. We can call it an inference to the best hypothesis too. Like, if this were true, what would we expect to find? We would expect to find that all the pieces of all the statements made, which we can be verified, would be vindicated. And that's what we find.
Could we maybe get a direct answer to what Jack asked there?
Yeah. I mean, you could say that that's what's going on, that because we find so many things in there that are accurate, that we then make the assumption that other statements will be accurate.
But why draw that inference, right? Why not think that the text is one which is accurate about some things and not accurate about things that we can't test? Like, what is it that is favoring the one hypothesis over the other?
Let's just make that super, super crystal clear. So we're getting two hypotheses on the table, okay? So one is the Puranas are reliable about both the things we've confirmed and the things they haven't confirmed. The other is they're reliable about the things we've confirmed, but not reliable about the things we haven't confirmed. What is it that would give us reason to accept the one hypothesis over the other? I just wanted it to be clear when you said that, Jack, because you said the two hypotheses and I was worried it would get kind of lost there. I just want to clarify what they are.
Yeah, because it seems like the evidence would be equally consistent with both hypotheses, right? So why are we inferring to these other facts?
And there's a word we can talk about that in one sec, happy to answer, but there's also a word for this, I think, which would be underdetermination, right?
Yeah, this seems like there's an underdetermination problem, and so I'm kind of wondering how to resolve that.
Right.
So the bits that can't be verified empirically can be verified subjectively. So not all truths are accessible in the external empirical world. Some truths are esoteric, and you access those through subjective means. So one thing that's esoteric is if I have a headache, you kind of just have to take my word for it. I'm the only one that can prove my headache. Some headaches are, what do they call it? There's a word when idiopathic, meaning they have no idea what's causing it, but that doesn't mean the person's not having a headache just because we can't find a neural correlate for it. So we can prove, the other statements can be proven by the practice of Krishna consciousness. And by following this practice, you elevate your consciousness to the level where you can perceive the truths that these statements are referring to.
So I want to add something there. Just one thing. I want to just add, since you brought in the term underdetermination, this brings us to the general problem of underdetermination in philosophy of physics. In many important cases, there is not enough in many important cases, there is not enough evidence to decide which of several alternative theories is true. Actually, if the history of physics is any guide, none of the theories is true. A physical theory is never proven true. It's only proven false. The longer a theory stands up to relentless experimentation, the more confidence we have that it is approximately correct, but can never be proven to be absolutely true.
Sid, there's an obvious problem with what you're saying.
Let me finish my point. Then you can interrupt. Yeah. Like two more words. Absolute truth doesn't exist in science. It is important to be clear about what science can and cannot deliver. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Okay, so this is how I'm understanding the dialectic right now. Okay, so I'm understanding that there's an argument that's being given that has the form, if the Puranas are accurate and the Puranas claim that God exists, then God exists. The Puranas are accurate. The Puranas claim that God exists, therefore God exists. So when we ask why we would accept that first premise, it seems like the response is, well, if the Puranas say a bunch of accurate stuff, then, or a bunch of stuff we can confirm, then we ought to believe the stuff that we can't confirm. So then when we raise a problem with that kind of sub-argument, right, that argument for the first premise, it seems like, so we raise the problem of saying, okay, well, there's two hypotheses here. The one is that the Puranas are correct about both the things we've been able to confirm and the things we haven't been able to confirm. And the other is that they're correct about the things we've been able to confirm and incorrect about the things we haven't been able to confirm. You could also create other hypotheses here, like partially correct about the things we haven't been able to confirm. Like maybe some of those things are true, some are false, whatever. Let's just leave the two hypotheses on the table for now. So then when we say, okay, well, it looks like we've got an underdetermination problem here. What exactly is the symmetry breaker that should cause us to favor, one of these theories over the other? It sounds like you both gave separate ones. So it sounds like Arjuna, sorry if I'm saying that wrong,
you got it right.
Oh, okay, good, great. I'm not confident I'll be able to do it again, but I'll try. It sounds like you're saying that the symmetry breaker is that those things that we can't verify, I guess, like through our normal empirical methods, they can be verified subjectively. And then Sidharth is offering a different symmetry breaker, and you're saying it's about the length of time that the hypotheses have existed for. So I think Sidharth's just straightforwardly fails because one hypothesis isn't older than the other. And then we could talk about Arjuna's. Maybe Jack has something to say to that.
Sorry, how does my hypothesis fail? Can you explain one more time?
Well, yeah, you tried to break the symmetry between the two hypotheses and suggest that that there's not an underdetermination problem in virtue of one hypothesis being older. But that's why we think one's older. I'm
not talking about one being older. The point I'm trying to say to you is that if you use the modern scientific methods, there is always a question whether a theory can ever be proven to be absolutely true, because modern science uses methods which are always in question. Some people ask, hey, this method is this method going to give the truth for forever and forever? Not really. The methods get replaced by improved methods, and they give different kind of knowledge. So the point I was trying to raise there was that in science you can never have absolute truth. That's not possible. So there is always a problem of underdetermination, especially in philosophy of physics.
When you have underdetermination between two hypotheses, though, you ought to be agnostic, which is correct, unless don't you agree? You think surely if the evidence equally supports two hypotheses, then it's not the case that you ought to select one over the other.
Well, the first hypothesis which you have there, which is that the other part of the data is incorrect and the first part of the data is correct, that hypothesis is made post hoc. So when you have two hypotheses, one of which is made post hoc, because the other one is, written thousands of years ago, I would take the first one. Like suppose if you're doing,
but there was the age thing again. There was the age thing again, right? Why would you get to say one is older? We can say, who knows? Someone might have had that other hypothesis back then. It's not, if the idea is you don't ever prove theories, you just knock theories down. It's like, okay, well, both the theory that everything in there is correct and the theory that the stuff we've been able to confirm is correct and the other stuff may not be, both of those are still standing. Neither has been knocked down, right? So it doesn't work as a symmetry breaker.
No, it works because one of them is made post hoc after observing the data. Like, hey, suppose we are in a game, and in that game, we're trying to figure out what is behind each door. Okay. Now, one person says that behind door 1, 2, and 3 out of the 10 doors, there is something. Another person says, that after the first 3 doors are open, he says, behind first 3 doors, there is there is something, and behind next 7 doors, there is there is nothing. I mean, let me put it differently, okay. So one person claims we're playing some kind of a game there where they have 10 doors and we're trying to find out some kind of hidden, wealth behind the doors. So the doors which can be opened are 1, 2, and 3. Person A comes, and there's 2 persons, person A and person B. Person A says that I know what's behind each door. And he says that behind first 3 doors, 1, 2, and 3, there is something. And behind next 7 doors, out of the next 7 doors, only door number 8 has, wealth. Now, after we open first 3 doors, person B comes and he sees the 3 doors are open, and he says, hey, these 3 doors have something. That's what I'm saying. And behind next 7 doors, there is nothing. Now, next 7 doors have not been opened yet. Now, whom would we put our confidence in? I would put my confidence in the first person because, he made the prediction before, the doors were open. So that's how science progresses. Science progresses when you have a theory, competing theories, which theory, makes a prediction which can be found later to be true. Of course, it can be the case that the theory which was made post hoc could be correct. But when you have 2 competing theories for which we have a symmetry, as you rightly pointed out, I would go with the one which is predating the discovery, not something which is made post hoc.
So we can.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure, I'll just make a quick point, then pass to you. So we can discuss post hocness as a symmetry breaker, but I just want to clarify that the initial symmetry breaker, which is how long the theory has existed without being refuted, just fails. So you're adding in a second one. And I was just going to ask Jack, do you accept the general characterization of the dialectic that I've given here, or are you seeing this differently? Because that's what it's looking like.
Yeah, I accept it, but it seems to me that Sidhartha may be employing a different or engaging in a different dialectic, right? Because otherwise I can't really understand his objection. Because the way I understand it is we have these facts. Let's grant for the sake of argument that there are these predictions that
how old is our universe, how old is the sun, and mass extinctions like that. Yeah.
Right. So there are these things that the Puranas state, right? So the question then is, it seems to me that what we're doing is we're asking, what is more likely to be true? That the Puranas are reliable about everything, including stuff that we don't have independent corroboration for, or corroboration at all for, or the hypothesis that the Puranas are reliable about everything, right? And so I just don't see how, if you frame the issue that way, there's even an issue of one of those hypotheses being ad hoc, right? We're just asking the question. Here's a fact which we're granting for the sake of argument that these statements in the Puranas are true, right? So, which is the more plausible hypothesis, that everything in it is true, or that only some things in it are true, at least the things that we have been able to corroborate, right? But why ought I think, right, that everything in it is true just because some of it is true, right? I just don't see how the issue of like an ad hoc auxiliary hypothesis even arises when the dialectic is presented that way.
So thank you, Jack. Since you are a philosopher, you're able to put things in a in a very deep manner, and I really appreciate for having you for this conversation.
I'm not actually a philosopher, by the way, but that's flattering. In any case.
What didn't you said something about philosophy in your introduction?
I study it informally, but I don't actually have any formal training in philosophy.
These days, studying informally or formally is practically the same. This is the information age. People
That's
become
right.
computer programmers by learning online. They don't necessarily go to
He's
school.
being modest, Sidharth. He's being modest.
Okay. That's nice to know.
Yeah.
Others, we had to debate that hypothesis right now. We as philosophers are not.
Is there an underdetermination problem?
Yeah. So, of course, since there is no objective verification of the part that that God exists, through empirical methods, we are up in air. Whether how can we state that? But my whole proposition was that the Puranas are genuine source of knowledge, and since they state these numbers or this data, which is extraordinary set of data, not something which is some usual such stuff like Earth is round or anything like that. So one can then go ahead and invest one's time in investigating the method which are given there for verifying the claim regarding soul or regarding one's connection with God, because those methods are also available in the Puranas. If somebody were to say, hey, I need to be proven empirically that God exists before I can, I need some kind of like empirical corroboration just for that part of the Puranas also, then, one can wait for that, because as I said earlier, that modern science is progressing slowly and slowly towards absolute truth. It took them 200 years to reach to a place where they have accepted this much part of the Puranas. And I'm hopeful, given that the progress of the science in the last 200 years, that in the future, they will vindicate more parts of the Puranas also in the future. However, as I said, there are various ways of gaining knowledge. Like I'm sure you gain knowledge through, your eyes. We gain knowledge through like phones. We trust them. Right now, what I'm seeing in the phone is a Zoom debate. I trust it. So similarly, what I'm offering is that we don't, question, after testing it one time, hey, today I use my phone and the phone worked. Maybe, and an hour later, maybe I need to check it. Maybe somebody just, some kind of like, cheating me by putting some kind of like crazy Trojan horse software into my phone. And actually I'm not, this phone is recording me or something like that. We can come with all kinds of crazy hypotheses and, be afraid of using the phone. What we are offering here is that one can go ahead and try the methods of the Puranas, which also offer, techniques for subjectively verifying the claim that God exists. However, on the strength of what we have shown, the extraordinary data points, one should have confidence in the Puranas that they are a reliable source of knowledge. Just in any case of any theory, like as I gave the example of theory of relativity, can you see space and time distortion? Can you see that?
But Sidharth, you're arguing for the premise we aren't challenging, right? So we're granting for the sake of argument that they're generally accurate. And I should clarify here, we're assuming you're not begging the question when you say accurate. We're assuming you're saying they've been accurate about a certain amount of claims. But we're not challenging that second premise, right? If the argument has the structure, if the Puranas are accurate and the Puranas claim God exists, then God exists. The Puranas are accurate, the Puranas claim God exists, therefore God exists. We're not challenging that premise that says that they're accurate. We're understanding that to mean they've been accurate about a bunch of empirical predictions. We're questioning that first premise. And a little side note, we're not asking, it doesn't have to be empirical proof for God. We'd accept an a priori argument. It's just you've kind of gotten yourself into the case where, well, I guess I'll just clarify the problem. We're talking about the first premise, right? We're talking about why should we accept that if the Puranas are accurate and the Puranas claim God exists, then God exists, right? We're saying it sounds like it seems like we can have two hypotheses there, right? One, that everything's accurate in the Puranas, the other, that some things are accurate. And we still haven't heard like a symmetry breaker. I've heard three proposed. The first, I think, was from Arjuna, who suggested that the things that can't be confirmed empirically can be confirmed through some kind of, subjective, like phenomenological, something about maybe your subjective experience. We can talk about that. I heard the length of time that the hypothesis has existed without being refuted symmetry breaker, but that's not going to work because that's equally true of both hypotheses. And then I also heard a symmetry breaker about ad hocness, and we're kind of getting into that. So how exactly are you breaking the symmetry such that you're able to say there isn't an underdetermination problem here?
Well, let's go back to the second point. I don't understand why you're saying both the hypotheses have been there for the same length, because the data was not there for these data points which I discussed before, like, a couple of years ago. So the second hypothesis which you're proposing, that the parts of the Puranas which have been shown to be correct are the correct ones, and the parts which have not been shown to be correct are the ones which we don't know about. How do you arrive at that second hypothesis? And why are you saying that hypothesis has been there for longer? I feel you have made the second hypothesis on the spot. It's a post-hoc hypothesis, isn't it?
That's a different way to try to break the symmetry. That's talking about post-hocness. I'm just talking about the initial way that you tried to break the symmetry, which is referring to how long it has been that the idea hasn't been shown false, right?
Yeah,
and
but that's why I was trying to say that that's sort of like the wrong way to frame the problem, right? The way to frame the problem is, okay, here we have here we are in the modern day, right? We have the ability to now, due to the advent of modern science, to actually evaluate some of the claims in the Puranas, right? So it turns out, let's grant for the sake of argument that it turns out that the Puranas makes these remarkable claims that are true, given what we know from the science information that you presented at the outset, right? Let's grant that for the sake of argument, right? So we're now asking, right, why ought I to infer that the stuff we don't have independent corroboration, that we don't have corroboration for at all, right? The stuff that we haven't found a way to test yet, or maybe inherently untestable, right? Why ought we think that is true rather than just be more modest and think, well, we know some of it is true, right? But we should be agnostic about the rest until we have a way of evaluating that, right? And Josh, my friend Josh, makes an interesting point, which is just that, look, if we, and I don't mean to be in any way insulting to the tradition. I'm not an anti-theist by using this example, so I'm not trying to be cheeky here. But if we sort of had a Spider-Man comic, right, it makes true statements about New York, right? Like if we, thousands of years from now, we found a Spider-Man comic and we wanted to know if that was a reliable sort of source of facts about that period in history that it seems to be reporting on, right? We might say, oh yeah, well, look, we've been able to check some of the stuff about New York. It gets a lot of the New York geography right? But would that be reason enough to think that it was reliable in other statements it makes that we don't have a way of testing, right? So that's sort of the question that we're raising. So I don't think the issue of how old the hypothesis is really relevant.
No, we're not talking about how old. The problem is that, let me give you two examples here. So first is the theory of relativity. So in the case of theory of relativity, when Einstein proposed, he proposed that gravity is due to space-time distortion. And that's something which cannot be tested, which cannot be seen by eyes or by our direct means. But based upon that, he made a prediction, and that prediction was a very precise prediction. And that prediction was that these stars during the time of eclipse would be deflected, the light from these stars would be deflected by this much distance. And what was found was that Newton theory also made a prediction, and that theory made the prediction that that the shift would be only half of it. So when in 1919, when Sir Arthur Eddington was able to find the evidence that matched the Einstein theory of relativity, his theory was accepted. It was not that was said, hey, maybe you are correct about this prediction, but the rest of the model is incorrect. Here in the case of the Puranas, the age of the universe is not some a hidden around some one statement as given in the text. It is part of the whole picture. It's a prediction coming out of the whole model. The model is the history of the universe, which is stated in the Puranas. So, so that is why what I'm proposing here is that just like in the case of theory of relativity, we don't question space-time distortion once we have observed evidence which can be tested. Similarly, I'm offering, like in physics, we do the same thing here with the Puranas. We accept it as a genuine source of knowledge. What do you think, Jack? Does it make sense? Or I would like to hear your
I think that
question.
there's a problem. I think there's a couple, at least one or two problems there.
Okay.
So I mean, the thing is, right now, the way I understand, first of all, I'm having some difficulty with the analogy with Einstein, right? Because there, what I'm understanding is the way the abductive inference works there, right, is that you had this is the way I understand the dialectic with respect to the 1919 experiments, right, was that, you had a reigning paradigm, let's say, which was the, basically Newtonian notion of space-time, right? And I think it was the 1870s or something, when the Michelson-Morley experiments took place, there were some anomalies that were observed in those experiments, which were inconsistent with the ether hypothesis, right, which was part of the Newtonian world picture at that time, right? And so Einstein came up with sort of a new paradigm, which would give up on all these key aspects to the Newtonian picture, right, but could accommodate the anomalies that the Michelson-Morley experiments had discovered, right? So his theory was consistent with that data, right? Unlike the Newtonian picture, right, which was inconsistent with that data, right? Now, what I take the 1919 experiments to, the reason why that's significant in, say, philosophy of science, right, why this is used as an example in philosophy of science, is because that had the virtue of that provided an additional explanatory virtue, right, to favor the Einsteinian hypothesis. Because the problem was that Einstein's theory could have been interpreted as a mere just so story, right? A story that was constructed merely to accommodate the anomalous data, right?
Yeah.
And so what made what was remarkable about the 1919 experiments that gave really strong abductive support to Einstein's theory was that it predicted something that nobody had ever expected to find, right? Nobody had ever thought of before, which is gravitational lensing, right? And so in 1919, they tested this. People, I guess there's some dispute as to whether they cooked the data or not, but the thing is, it's been corroborated many times since, right? So we know
it was found later that it was cooked up. Actually, there was some mistake. They made some mistake.
We'll have a few minutes before we go into Q&A.
Oh, okay. Oh, we didn't get very far in this.
No, we didn't.
We're going to have to do this again sometime.
Yeah.
So I take it that there, what you're saying is there's two. So the way I would frame the dialectic there, just to put it simply, is you have two explanatory hypotheses: Newtonian mechanics and Einstein relativity theory, and one both accommodates the anomalous data that the Newtonian picture cannot, but is additionally strongly supported by novel facts that it predicts. So it has this extra virtue of predictive novelty. And so on that basis alone, that it correctly explains the data that Newtonian mechanics cannot, and the fact that it makes novel predictions makes it a more explanatorily virtuous theory, right? But see, now it seems like you're making a different point with that, which is you're saying that we should treat the model of the universe outlined in the Puranas as a single model, right? And so we should say that the model is likely true, right? given that that it also made novel predictions, right? Which we're granting for the sake of argument for now, right? We're saying, yeah, the Puranas did make novel predictions, right? But see, the issue there is that I'm not sure why those predictions are not actually detachable from the model, right? Because that's why it seems like there's sort of two issues to debate, right? One is, should we have an inference to whether the Puranas are reliable about facts that we don't have corroboration of, right? And then the second issue is, should we make some other explanatory inference from the fact that the Puranas were able to predict or correctly state, facts about the age of the universe and the age of the sun and so on, to there being a divine being or divine source as the best explanation for how it was able to have access to those facts, right? And so, at one point earlier in this discussion, we were trying to clarify which hypothesis, or which abductive inference we were going to target at the outset, right? And I thought we had focused on this one about whether the Puranas were reliable, right? But it sounds like what you're now doing is sort of moving to the other hypothesis, which is fine. It's just sort of a shift midstream to we should take the fact that the Puranas are able to predict these remarkable things as evidence for a divine source, right? And so that's like a whole different, I'm not sure we're going to really have the time to cover that because we're so far down along the line in this debate. But that seems like there's going to be different issues there as to how to evaluate that type of argument. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, I see.
wanted to respond to the Spider-Man story. So, if there was a Spider-Man comic which was the author claimed was predictions about the future and things that were going to happen, and these predictions had a probability of being true, which we could work out to be 1 in 10 to the 186. And we had enough of the predictions from this comic come true, and there were things the author could not have known other ways, then we might start to ask ourselves if maybe this comic was somehow inspired and was making predictions about the future. Or suppose I claimed I had psychic abilities, and you're like, oh yeah, prove it. And then I made a series of predictions, and the probability of me getting that series of predictions right worked out to be 1 in 10 to the 186. Then maybe that would count as evidence for me being psychic. Like there's one savant, I can't remember his name, but anything he's ever read, he can memorize. So you ask him a question on date, anything, any piece of history, he can answer on anything. So do we assume that, he's only able to answer the questions which he's correctly answered, and that's probably everything he knows? Or do we assume, geez, he's never gotten a question which he couldn't answer? Maybe he can answer every single question. So the probabilities involved for these dates, these predictions to be accurate is so great that it irks of something divine.
Yeah, but that's to go back to the hypothesis that we decided not to. That's to switch to a different sort of abductive argument, which is that the best explanation for these remarkable, the remarkable knowledge that the Puranas seems to report, right, is that it has a divine source, right? And that's going to be a whole other inference than the one that Isaac had tried to outline. Am I right, Isaac? Right?
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm following you, actually. So I understand you're talking about one argument that would just say, I'll have to think about how to structure it, but something like, just in virtue of predicting these crazy things, like it's likely that God exists, or the Puranas are correct, or something like that. That's one of them.
Well,
one is going to be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So it might be useful for us to just make sure we're understanding each other, because I know the line I was pressing, but I'm not totally clear what the second part of your opening is.
I thought one issue was, should the fact that the Puranas is accurate about some facts be a license to us to should we be licensed to thus infer that it's reliable about everything else that it says, right? Ought we to believe that, right? The other things that it says, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one type of argument, right? But the other argument is going to be something like, well, there are these remarkable facts that we don't have a naturalistic explanation for, which is that the authors of the Puranas seem to know things that it doesn't seem like they could have possibly known given the level of their scientific technical knowledge. And therefore, the best explanation for them being able to know this is through contact with a divine source, and that therefore counts as evidence that the divine source exists. Right. And so it's a kind of argument for the existence of God or something like that. Right. Those are two very different types of inferences.
Yeah, definitely. Those are two different hypotheses.
I'll give you a quick response, Sidharth, and then we want to jump into the Q&A. So I'll give you a chance to respond.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. There are two different hypotheses, and most of our discussion has been talking about the first one. Arjun just mentioned the second one at the end, just as in a one line to give an alternative or a secondary, you can say push also there. But going back to the first one, which is that the first one where we are saying that Puranas are a reliable source of knowledge, and they have stated this information, which has been proven to be true. And you're wondering, how would we, or what, as Isaac pointed out, that there are two competing hypotheses, and there's a symmetry problem here. One of the hypotheses is that all that Purana says is correct. And the second hypothesis is that whatever we have found right now is correct, but whatever we have not checked is incorrect.
Or if not incorrect, is questionably correct. We don't know. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So to that, I was saying that's how the science moves. In science, in modern science, at least in physics, given two competing theories, you go with the one theory which makes the predictions and not competing theory. So given that we have a theory which makes some predictions, and there are parts of which can't be tested, either we can wait for eternity for all the parts to be tested before we can use the theory, or we use the theory and move ahead and wait for it to be proven false. So what I'm suggesting is that since the Puranas have shown to be correct on these data points, which are very, very special data points, and very novel testable predictions, just as in the case of 1919 experiment for Einstein's theory of relativity. Therefore, we should take it for granted that this hypothesis that the Puranas are a source of knowledge should be accepted, and we should go ahead and try the Puranic method. And of course, the final verification of this point regarding does God exist has to be subjective. And there is no way we can provide ever an empirical method, empirical proof for God exists. It's a subjective experience which one has to have. So, but what I'm asking people, or the viewers or yourself, is to try it, not wait for just say in the case of germ theory, people waited 20 years to use the washing the hand recommendation by Samuel Weiss, and because of that, so many people lost their lives. Now we have very short lives, so we have to take a decision. What do we want to do in our life? We want to wait for science to discover God, or we want to go ahead and try the experiment?
Gotcha.
I guess, well, all I was going to say is, I just don't see what the symmetry breaker is. I don't know if Jack caught it, but this is where I'm at, okay? We have this 3-premise argument. If the Puranas are accurate, they claim God exists, God exists. They're accurate, they claim God exists, therefore God exists. We push on the first premise, and we ask, why should we accept this claim? That if the Puranas make this claim, or that if the Puranas are generally accurate and they claim God exists, that God exists. And it seems, I'm still just not clear when we say there's two hypotheses here, right? There's one that says the Puranas are just right about everything, the claims they've made that have been tested and those that haven't, and a second hypothesis that says they're correct about the claims that have been tested, but we don't know the truth value. We don't know if they're correct about the others that haven't. They're incorrect or partially correct or something like that. what breaks the symmetry such that we ought favor one of those, so that we're not dealing with underdetermination? And the three things that I've heard, that I've caught, were the ones that aren't empirically testable can be confirmed subjectively from Arjuna, which we didn't even really talk about. We could talk about that, probably don't have time. I heard mention of how long the hypothesis has existed without being rejected, which I don't think, I don't actually see how, I don't see how they've existed for differential amounts of time. So that doesn't seem like a symmetry breaker. It seems like if it's equally true of both, it's not a symmetry breaker. So it's a category error to propose it as one. And then the third was about ad hocness. And I don't know if we really got anywhere with that, but I would just, what I would like is if you could just be like perfectly clear, like without like elaborating over like multiple paragraphs, which I'm not saying to be rude. I'm saying it for my own sake so I can understand. If you could just be perfectly clear, what is the symmetry breaker here?
As I said earlier, that in physics or in modern science, whenever a theory is proposed, or at least in the case of modern physics, there are parts of theories which can't be tested. There are parts of theories which can be tested, which are falsifiable. The Puranas have parts of it which are falsifiable, and they have proven to be correct. Therefore, I am arguing that they should be accepted as genuine source of knowledge.
I don't see how that's a symmetry breaker.
Well, I have an explanation for why they should all be correct. Do you have an explanation for why some of the parts are correct and other parts are incorrect?
That's just not answering the question.
I'm asking you a question. Did you answer my question?
No, of course not. I'm asking you a question. Why would I let myself be derailed like that? I don't think, just to be clear, it's not clear. I was just going to say, Sidharth, I don't think you've answered the question of what the symmetry breaker is, right? So if I put pressure on that and you respond by trying to grill me about my view, that's beside the point as to whether you can justify that's beside the point as to whether you on your view can justify that there's an asymmetry there to stop underdetermination, right? That's your challenge. Asking me a question is beside the point. I just want to know what the answer is supposed to be.
You're the one who's proposing second hypotheses. I'm saying, can you explain your second hypotheses? I'm saying that my hypothesis, which is the first one, which is that all everything stated in the Puranas is correct, is something which is based on ancient texts, which can be checked, which can be studied, which can be read. Where is the explanation for your second hypothesis? You're saying that there are parts of it which are correct, which we have just discovered, and the rest of it is incorrect. But there is explanation for it. Why would those parts be incorrect?
Maybe I'm not understanding. Jack, are you appreciating what the symmetry breaker is here, or are you also just not understanding what it's supposed to be?
It sounds like the idea is something like you've got these two different ideas, right? One is that the Puranas are accurate about including things we haven't been able to test. And the other is that it's not necessarily accurate about the things we haven't been able to test, right? And he's saying, well, if we have evidence for the hypothesis that the Puranas were written by people who were in contact with a divine source, and that's an explanation for how they could have this knowledge, right? In the first place, right? And the alternative hypothesis makes no commitment to anything of that kind. It just has this glaring, unexplained set of facts, right? Which is, how is it that the authors of these texts were able to be in possession of that knowledge, right? And so I think it sounds like Sidharth is trying to say that because you have an explanation for how it is that they could be right about some of the things, whereas in the alternative case, you have no explanation for how they could be right about some of the things, we should prefer the first, because at least you have an explanation, right? Whereas the other case, there's no explanation being offered at all. It's just taken as unexplained.
Well,
right?
They're not equal, are they?
Well, see, I don't really see that as being a good explanation. Just saying God told them, right? I don't take that to be a good explanation, which is sort of the same objection I would make in the case of the fine-tuning data, right? Is it's very easy to say, oh, for any unexplained thing, to say, oh, it has a divine explanation, right? It seems to me you're going to need something a lot more than just sort of the fact that we don't have an explanation, we don't have a naturalist explanation, right, for something, to then infer to a hypothesis to, an omniscient being that has the capacity to reveal things, right, to explain that fact, right? For me to think that that's better than any possible naturalistic explanation, even one that I don't have, right? You're going to need something much more than that, right? It's kind of like this, right? Like, here's a way to think about it. Like, let's say we have cheese, right? Well, we don't, we might not know why it is that we live in a universe that has the capacity for there to be cheese, right? There are all types of universes that could have existed where there wasn't a possibility of there being cheese, right? It would have been inconsistent with the physical laws for cheese to ever emerge. So we can posit a God that has the capacity, the desire, right, to produce a universe in which cheese would eventually emerge, right? And so if I don't have an explanation for how cheese emerged, right, that is something predicted by the hypothesis, right? But it doesn't seem to me to be a good explanation.
No, but we're not talking about not having an explanation for something people happen to find tasty. We're talking about not having an explanation for something that is mathematically impossible otherwise. 1 in 10 to the 186 is a really big improbability. So I can't see how you're making the discrimination between the two hypotheses any other way than by having an a priori metaphysical bias against anything that's not naturalism.
I hate to do this, guys, but just because
it's worth pointing out, Jack isn't a naturalist.
We're going to jump into the Q&A. I hate to do this, guys, but just because we have gone for a while, and I know some people have been waiting for their question to get asked for a while, so forgive me, guys, for doing that. But want to remind you folks that our guests are linked in the description. So if you want to hear more, you certainly can by going to their links in the description. And hey, I'm open to having these guys on again. It would be a blast, in fact, so we'd love to have them back on. And so thanks for your patience to our speakers as we try to jump into everybody's questions. So thanks, everybody, for your questions. This one coming in from Sebastian says, great win for Jack, and to ask yourself, please ask them what they think about Nick Bostrom's simulation argument. Really interested in their opinion.
I don't really remember the argument that well. I know he argues it's more likely we're in a simulation. I don't have anything interesting to say about it, though. Sorry.
No problem. And thanks for your question. Or I didn't give you a chance, Jack. Sorry about that. Do you have thoughts, Jack?
Oh, well, I think the argument is very interesting, although I haven't really ever tried to really engage with it. I think there might be an issue. I subscribe to pragmatist epistemology there. So I think there might be an issue with the coherence of the simulation hypothesis on a pragmatist epistemology. But I can't really say much more than that, without looking into it more.
Gotcha. And thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from Soldier of Science says, ask yourself, I would like to donate $5 to get you to consider changing your label. Isn't everyone an agnostic?
Changing my label, to atheist? Well, I take atheist to mean someone who denies that God exists. So like they affirm the proposition it's not the case that God exists. And that's actually not my view. So it would be a wrong label. But if you mean atheist as in like someone who lacks belief, if that's the definition you're using, that's fine. I just don't want to confuse people. So I think agnostic is unambiguous, regardless of which construal of atheist you take. You know what I'm saying when I say agnostic.
Juicy. So is it fair to say you're in the Steve McRae camp? That's a fun topic we have once in a while. Or is it?
Well, no, I think Steve goes a bit further. I think Steve makes prescriptive statements about what definition we ought use, and if I'm wrong, he can correct me on that. But I don't go that far. Like, I think both definitions are coherent. Maybe you could raise some practical issues with one. Like, I think Steve tries to say you're going to count like people who believe in God, but do it for irrational reasons. I forget his critique, but no, I'm not committed to that strong a position. I just know that if I say agnostic, it doesn't matter which version of atheism you have in your head, you'll know what I'm saying. But if I say atheist, people who have a given version will get the wrong impression and think I'm making a claim that's too strong. So I just go for the term that's most likely to accurately convey what I believe.
Gotcha. And everyone needs a smile. Thank you for your question said. Question for Sidharth and Arjuna / Theology Unleashed. If it could be shown that the dates in the Puranas don't match modern science, would you assume the Puranas are incorrect or modern science?
Well, if it can be shown that they are not vindicated or not supported by modern science, then given that depends which epistemology you follow. If you follow the epistemology of empiricism, then yes, Puranas are incorrect source of knowledge. However, if you follow the other epistemology, which is that I just accept everything which is stated in the Puranas to be correct, then from that perspective, Puranas will still stay, correct for them. So it depends, what kind of model do you follow?
I think they're asking you what you follow, though. Because your answer was a conditional. You said, well, if you have this view, you'd say this. If you had that view, you'd say that. But they want to know what you'd say.
Well, I would say that the science what I've found, that it goes through sometimes cycles. But from what we have found right now is that the Puranas have been, thoroughly vindicated by modern science. So, I feel that if for some facts Puranic data is not corroborated by modern science, I feel modern science will eventually come to agree what is stated in the Puranas.
But say it were just shown to be widely inaccurate. Right. That's kind of what the question's getting at. Like, say it just turned out that the scientific predictions are just bunk. Like, just for the sake of argument, if that were the case, would you abandon the Puranas or science?
I'll give you a chance to respond, and then we got to go to the next one.
I was going to answer.
Not necessarily, because they have been shown to be correct in so many different ways. Like just these three data points and many of the subjective experiences. I'm pretty confident that they will come out to be true. Just like in the case of the age of the universe, if you had asked a question 100 years ago, the opinion among the scientists was that the universe is eternal at that time, and or sometime later the opinion was that the universe was only like a couple of billion years old. Those numbers were pretty
Arjuna,
off.
I know you want to respond too.
Yeah. So I have more than just this. Okay.
So those numbers are pretty off than what we have current understanding of modern science. So like that, in future, if there is a modern scientific claim which is very much off from the Puranas, I would assume that in future it will come to align itself with the Puranas. Go ahead, Arjuna.
So it would take more than just the cosmological data in the Puranas to be off for me to discredit them, because the philosophy in them is so rich and there's so much philosophical support for it, and then experiential support too. By following the practice, I get the results which are promised by following those practices to the degree that I follow them to the proper standards. So, if chanting Hare Krishna didn't, have effects on my consciousness as they're described, and the scientific information was found wrong and philosophically it didn't stack up, then I would reject it. But if only the cosmological details failed, then I would just say, oh, maybe it's not describing the world the way we perceive it. Maybe it's a metaphor, or maybe it's describing it from a different angle of vision than what we have access to through our senses.
Jumping into the next one, Dharma Defender, thanks for your question, said, to the atheist crowd, do universals exist? If so, where do they exist? If not, is that universally true that there are no universals? Thanks.
Oh, I'm sure Jack would love a question like that.
Not really. I mean, I don't.
Isn't that like a Darth question?
I guess it is. Yeah. I mean, I'm not really sure that the debate between nominalists and realists about universals is actually a substantive debate. So I really don't have. I'm not only do I not take a position on whether universals exist or not, I'm not just even clear on whether it's a substantive question. I guess is what I would say.
Gotcha. And Juicy Lewis Barnett, thanks for your question, said, Jack, have you missed in-person events because of COVID?
Well, there have been no events. They stopped all the events. There's no performing arts. There's no lectures. There's no classes. Well, I mean, the classes are all online, right? So there's nothing in person that's actually happening that I could be attending. So I haven't missed anything.
Gotcha. And Farhan Salas, thanks for your question, said, Sidharth and Arjuna, do the Piranhas sound better on vinyl? I don't get it.
He's making fun of the name. He's saying it sounds like a band.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm slow, you guys. But they said also, Farron also said, thanks, debaters, and to the show. So thanks for your kind words, Farron, on behalf of all of us. We appreciate you. And then Brenton Langle, stoked to see you, dearest friend. He says, if we grant that the Piranhas are a reliable source, what exactly does that say regarding gods or a god? Miracles aren't evidence of anything in particular except power.
Well, I mean, you have an explanatory framework that fits with miracles, therefore they count as evidence for that framework. You'd need an alternative hypothesis which explain them.
Gotcha. And by the way, Isaac, aka Ask Yourself, I have been seeing in the chat, people are saying we want to see Darth versus Jack. I have seen that in the chat a lot tonight.
I told you.
So we have to, we'll let you know, folks. I already said it to Converse when he was here. I said, Converse, people are calling for it. So we'll see if Converse is able to. Jack, are you good buddies with Darth?
Not anymore, no.
Oh.
But he was offered $300 to debate me. But
let's make it $350. I'll throw 50 in. It's $350 now.
Okay. I don't think he's going to accept.
All right. Well, sorry to hear that. And thank you for your question. Chris Gammon, good to see you, says, for Sidharth and Arjuna, if scientific methods improve and begin to show the universe is actually 30 billion years old, are your Puranas no longer accurate and reliable? Please consider this and give your best answer.
Arjun, I think I already answered it. Arjun, you want to repeat yourself?
Oh, yeah, it's kind of like the same question we already had. So I would just assume that the Puranas were talking about it in a sense different from how science is talking about it. So they could be describing the world from a mode of vision which we don't have accessible through our five senses. And I would still accept the statements given on the Puranas based on the other lines of evidence, personal experience, and philosophical support.
Gotcha. And Brenton Langle strikes again. Says, validity of texts seems beside the point. Brahman can never be the object of its own knowledge, i.e., a knife cannot cut itself, fire cannot burn itself.
I don't know what's there.
I'm not even sure. I'm not sure who it's for.
Yeah, it's just some kind of a strange statement. Yeah.
A third-party opinion. And Sephirin, thank you for your super sticker support. Appreciate it. Ruxter has a question. Thank you very much. Ruxter says, I am still unclear what the symmetry breaker was to deal with the issue, adjudicating the competing hypotheses. I might have missed it. Do you guys feel?
I have something to offer on that. Suppose you're eating a big piece of cheese. You bite into the first one, it tastes good. Now you haven't eaten the other part of the cheese. Now there are two competing hypotheses. Of course, before beginning, you good, and you tasted a small piece of it. It turned out to be good. Now there are two competing hypotheses. One is that the rest of it is poison, or the rest of it is also good. Now, take your pick. Which one would you choose? You are hungry. Would you wait for some mice to come and eat the rest of the cheese, practically all of it, before you can conclude that it is not poisonous? Well, we are all hungry currently in the world. We don't have a solution to problems like envy, greed, pollution, and Puranas have an answer. Either we can wait for science to prove all the parts of it, or we can accept it and see changes in our life.
Gotcha. And thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing this right, so forgive me if I don't, but is it
Good luck, James.
Anit Kathira, let me know if I've pronounced it right, or not. Thank you for your question. Said, if we find the Infinity Gauntlet, should we believe the entirety of the Marvel Universe? If an empirical claim of your faith was shown false, what would prevent you from claiming it was only metaphorical?
Well, I mean,
Well,
we give evidence for it, and if that evidence fails, then we just stop using that piece of evidence. But if we have other evidence, like I said, my personal experience of the practice would have to fail, and I would have to see that the philosophy doesn't stack up.
Gotcha.
As far as the Infinity Gauntlet goes, if we did find that, and there was some ways in which, it was improbable to 1 in 10 to the 186, like the data we have in the Puranas is, then I'd say that's pretty impressive evidence for the Marvel comic world existing.
Gotcha. And thank you very much. This question coming in from Brenton Lango says, what is the Puranic method?
The Puranic method is chanting the names of God in your language daily for a good amount of time.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And Labzor, thank you as well. Says, for Jack, what is it that is fundamentally absolute and non-dependent from which all your knowledge claims derive?
Get wrecked, Jack.
Vadanti tattvavidas tattvam jnanam yat advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagwan iti shabdete. This is a verse from Bhagavad Purana, which says that the absolute truth has 3 features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. Brahman is the all-pervading, energy of God. Then the form of God, which is in the heart, and then there's a supreme personality of Godhead. So these are 3 different levels of absolute truth. And the philosophy is very deep. You're welcome to study Bhagavad Purana. You can find it on vedabase.com if you want to know more about absolute truth.
You got it. And Jack, any thoughts on that question?
Well, I don't think that they're necessary concrete facts. So I don't think there could be some kind of causal dependency, and probably not some kind of constitutive dependency either. Now, there might be like logical dependency. So there might be like fundamental logical truths, like things like laws of logic. But presumably there's just going to be some brute contingent facts. I don't see any getting away from that. So I think that the question is actually loaded. It presupposes that, I think the question presupposes that there's no brute contingency. And I just take that view to be self-defeating.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And thanks, Sheepwork, for your question. Asked, was Krishna vegan? And if not, is that hypocritical?
Krishna is lacto-vegetarian, so he takes dairy as well as vegetables, and the cows are cared for like mothers. So in Vedic culture, there's 7 mothers. Cow is one mother because you take the cow's milk, and therefore the cow is sacred and needs to be protected. So the compassion is a critical element, and because the cow's giving milk, it's treated with the greatest care.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from Brenton Langle. Let's see. We had to change in the screens there. Oh, there it is. Okay. 2 of me for a second. But Brenton, stoked to have your question for Arjuna. Brenton says, you tried chanting Nam Myoho Rengi Kayo?
I think maybe he's asking to chant something nonsense and see if it gives the same result. I definitely haven't tried chanting that, but
yeah, there's certain gods whose name I would be worried about like chanting in public.
That's a Tibetan Buddhist chant, Nam Myoho.
Oh, okay, right. So it's possible that chant gives a similar result. Our religion sees things in quite an inclusive way, so there can be names of God in other religions that give similar results when chanted. I'm totally satisfied with the results I get from chanting Hare Krishna, and if Nam Myoho Renge Kyo are names of God, even if they're not, I'm sure the Sanskrit meaning is something uplifting or Sanskrit. It might be another language. I can't remember what language the Buddhists use.
I think
Pali?
I think that's a Tibetan chant.
Tibetan, is it?
Right? Yeah, I think so.
New Land Buddhism is theistic, by the way, and it's very similar in its teachings to the Bhakti Yoga in our tradition.
You got it. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it, Brenton. And next question, just kidding, we love Brenton. This is, thank you very much for letting me know regarding your name. Auntie Kitera, thank you very much for your question. Said, what's the difference between how you would justify discrepancies between Vedas and science, and how young Earth creationists would justify discrepancies between their view and geology or science?
Well, we're not in the position that young Earth creationists are in, because we don't have a divide between what's taught in the Puranas and what science has discovered. If we were in that situation and we were, acting in a similar way, then it would be a fair comparison. But given that we have the science on our side, we're in a different situation.
Just to be sure, because I might not have read it that well. I think they're saying, like, theoretically, they said, how would you justify discrepancies? I think they're saying, like, if there were discrepancies.
I haven't paid much attention to young Earth creationists and how they argue. I do have to say I've never been impressed. Dinosaur bones were planted by the devil to trick you.
If there was a theoretical discrepancy, how you would address it between discrepancy between your view and science.
He seemed to answer that clearly, though. He just said the science isn't all there is to it. Like, tell me if I'm wrong, but you just said, like, if ultimately it turns out the science is wrong, then yeah, you'll grant that, but you still have independent reasons to accept Krishna. Wasn't that the view? Like subjective experience and stuff.
Okay,
depending on the strength of the science, if our scripture said the Earth was 5,000 years old, I'm not sure I'd accept that, because just basic things about cause and effect tell us that things are older than 5,000 years. So supposing our scripture said the Earth was 5,000 years old, I'd just interpret it metaphorically, or say it must be saying something else. I don't know what it's saying, and I'll just focus on the bits I can confirm through my experience and through philosophy.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And then, pardon my missing that earlier. Anton Pai, thanks for your question, said, how is Hinduism caste system different from apartheid?
The Indian caste system that goes on today is a degradation, and it is despicable. It's a degradation of an older system, which is actually based on quality. So it's basically a way of structuring society where people who have certain qualities, it's not by birth. You could be born in any kind of varna, but if you have the qualities of a higher caste, of a higher varna, then you're meant to be allowed to, live as that varna and work as that varna. And the whole point is, if you have somebody who has the qualities of a Sudra running the kingdom, then they just pocket all the money and, oh, wait, hang on, look at modern society.
Gotcha. And thank you very much for your question. Brian Stevens says, what is one specific truth that Krishna has helped them find that can only be found through Krishna?
Sorry, can you say it one more time?
They had asked, what is one specific truth that Krishna has helped them find that can only be found through Krishna?
Well, the impressive thing that I'd say can only be done, given the theology being true, is that the transformation of characters. So, Prabhupada came and was asked, what's your mystical ability? And he said, my mystical ability is that, I take all these degraded people and I turn them into saintly people. So, there's like all sorts of psychology dedicated to how to transform people. But actually it's found, like, the AA 12-step program, that it's intrinsically theistic, and that's the most successful program at transforming people into not being alcoholics. So similarly, in the Hare Krishna movement, there's a big track record and impressive stories of people's lives being turned around. And my life has definitely been uplifted by the practice. And I don't think you could just do that with wishful thinking. Wishful thinking doesn't make people give up being a drug addict.
Gotcha. Richard Gray, thanks for your question, said, does the historical evidence for Jesus and his claims of being the Son of God disprove Hinduism? I would think that all of you would say no. Or, maybe they're saying if you granted that those arguments for Jesus were sound or strong.
They're saying if Jesus is reincarnated and that proves Christianity, does that disprove Krishna consciousness?
I think they're maybe saying, like, if you granted the minimal facts argument for the resurrection that had come up earlier in the debate, let's say, I think they're saying, like, would that disprove Hinduism?
No, it wouldn't, because the version of Hinduism that we follow, called Vaishnavism or Chaitanya Vaishnavism, is very inclusivist. So God is all loving. It's said that he descends wherever and wherever there's a decline in religious practices, and he comes to, reinvigorate the religious teachings. So the idea that he came or sent someone, whether you want to accept Jesus as God or as sent by God, either one is fine by us. It's consistent with that thing of God expressing his compassion and giving people all over the world opportunities to be uplifted in God consciousness.
Gotcha. And folks, so sorry. Just if you, let's see, we have a shortage of questions for Isaac and Jack. So thanks for your patience, guys. We have many for Sidharth and Arjuna. So we'll ask just two more, and then we've got to wrap up. But we do appreciate your questions. Big Thang Bruce Wayne said, it must be that they're asking Arjuna and Sidharth. They say, are claims sufficient evidence for other gods?
I don't understand the question. Are claims evidence? If I claim the great pumpkin exists, is that evidence that the great pumpkin exists? Maybe that's the question.
I think that's roughly it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, my problem with that type of reasoning is, let's define the great pumpkin. It has all the qualities God has, only it's a pumpkin instead of Krishna. Well, then we're not arguing over whether God exists. We're just arguing details about God. So to say, is that evidence of my God versus your God, is kind of philosophically inaccurate, when really we're just, there's a motor vehicle. Is it a Ford or is it a Hyundai? That's kind of the debate. It's not, which motor vehicle, is there a motor vehicle? Is there this one? Oh, I guess that example doesn't quite work there. But with God, we're talking about one thing, like the podium creator argument, the guy who created the podium, is he Krishna or is he a pumpkin? That's kind of the debate. So we've already accepted that God exists at that point. There's philosophical arguments that get you to a single divinity. And I think there's philosophical arguments for Krishna, because God is the greatest being imaginable, and Krishna fits that definition better than a pumpkin.
You got it. And thank you very much. Last question. Appreciate it. Platium, thanks so much for helping us out in the Discord. Not helping. Platium and Larry Letts do everything. And so I want to say huge thank you to people like Platium, Larry Letts, and others who have helped run the Modern Day Debate Discord. And like I said, fully have run it. So could you ask what Purana translates to? I think they're asking if I can ask that. So in other words, what does Purana translate to?
Ancient history.
You got it. So thank you very much, gentlemen. I sincerely appreciate it. I know there's, we haven't gotten as deep as I think that all of us would have liked to have, and I apologize for that. But we do really want to say thank you guys. You guys, honestly, you're the lifeblood of the channel. You make it fun. And so sincerely, Isaac, Jack, Sidharth, and Arjuna, it's been a true pleasure to have you guys on.
Thanks, James.
Cool. Thank you.
And thanks, guys, for coming. I liked this discussion.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I wish we could go more deeper. It was becoming interesting.
I'm sorry we weren't really able to do justice to evaluating the arguments you guys were trying to make. So that's probably our failure.
We can always follow up. You can always come by the server if you want to talk more. We can make that happen.
That's
Send me some links. We could do another one on my channel too.
Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. We're a relatively shorter format, and so that makes it harder on you guys. And so we appreciate you guys, and want to let you know in the audience, all of our guests are linked in the description. If Jack has a link in the future, I'll add that as well. And so you can hear plenty more, or read plenty more, listen plenty more from our guests. They are in the description, whether you're listening via YouTube or via the podcast. And so one last thank you to our guests, and thank you everybody for all of your questions and just hanging out here. The more the merrier. And like we said, hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you come from. So thanks again to our guests. And I will be back in just a moment with a quick post-credit scene about upcoming debates, everybody. So stick around for that. Thanks, everybody, and be back in just a moment.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. That was an epic one. And like we had said, our guests are linked in the description. If you'd like to hear more, what are you waiting for? Those links are right there at the very top of the description box, whether you're listening via YouTube or podcast. And so thank you so much, everybody, for all of your support. And thank you so much if you are listening via podcast. Want to remind you, if you happen to give us a rating, that helps us a lot. We really do appreciate that. And folks, I'm just excited. I got to be honest. Well, first let me say hi to you, and then I'll tell you what I was a little bit nervous about. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Sonny DeVille, Jelly Bones, Marion Gran Bruheim, let me know if I'm pronouncing it right. Vesper, Realist, D-Truth, glad you made it, friend, says hello, pinning that to the top of the chat. We appreciate you being here and saying hello, my friend. Soldier of Science, good to see you again. Grimlock says 150 likes and James will do a shoe reveal. Oh, you guys, that's for real. Oh, I have like the best shoes that I have to show you. They're tremendous shoes. People are saying they're the best. And Larry Letts, thanks for being with us. I appreciate your help on the Discord, man. When I say help, that's an understatement. I appreciate that you guys do the Discord because I am an embarrassingly absent Discorder, but really do appreciate you guys. And so we hope that the Discord for Modern Day Debate is fun. I wish that I could like offer more and like try to pour into it in terms of trying to add like to make it cooler. I just appreciate you guys. It's I'm like doing as much as I can for Modern Day Debate and I love it, but I also like sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, I've got to do like schoolwork and everything. And so it's a hard one, but we appreciate you guys are the biggest supporters. And I just hope you know how much I appreciate that, folks. We have a dream, a vision of hosting fair debates on a level playing field so everybody can make their case and also making the world a better place. And so we do appreciate you guys as you help us in fulfilling that vision. Thank you guys that you guys have just been so supportive. And hey, despite all the doubters, my dear friends, we are going to do that, and it's going to be epic. You're going to see it. And so we are excited about the future. So thank you, guys. And the thorn in my side, thanks for being with us, says, thanks, everyone. Thank you, the thorn in my side. And Ralph Ellis, good to see you again. JG, glad you're here. Nick Boismanu, thanks for being with us. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Let me know. Dharma Defender, glad you're here with us. And Clinton Rosh, good to see you again. Thanks for being with us. And yes, I'm pumped though. It's always cool. It's fun to chat. And so Brenton Langle, he's always at it. He's always got energy. We love it. I always enjoy it. My dearest friend Brenton, there he is. And let's see, best top. Glad you're here. Better late than never, buddy. Marky O, thanks for hanging out with us. EndoXD says, I was doing Latin homework, but I remembered about this debate. Thanks for coming in and checking us out, even with your Latin homework. I was doing work today. Usually I take Saturday off. It's usually my only day off. But I actually work today because I've got like this big paper that I'm working on finalizing. So I sympathize. I'm with you. And John Smith, good to see you again. Slam RN, good to see you. Oh, man, longtime supporter. Thanks for always being so positive, Slam RN. Seriously, we appreciate you more than you know. And Lewis Barnett, good to see you. And then Auntie Cathera. Let me know if I've said that right. We're just glad you're here. Thanks for being with us. And yes, I'm pumped though, you guys. Jelly Bones, stoked. I appreciate your kind words. And Brian Stevens, thanks for your support. Says smash that like button. Thanks for that. I appreciate that, Brian Stevens. Your support means a lot. The 40-year-old vegan, glad you are here, my friend. Said later, be kind, be vegan. It's simple. It's easy, simple, really. Thank you for being with us, my friend. And Master Optics, thanks for being with us. Says, so James, Arjuna believing in Krishna? We're kind of like flexible with our titles, but thank you for being with us, my dearest Megan Satanis. Good to see you again, as well as Oshkosh Bajosh says, I wish MDD wasn't usually a shorter format. It's true. We are. I admit it, guys. We are a little bit shorter than some of the debate channels out there. And so that can be like, man, I wanted to hear more. But thanks for your patience, as we appreciate you guys being patient with that. And maybe in the future, like as I have more time kind of free up, maybe we will go for longer formats. Reality Hits, good to see you. Thanks for being with us, my dear friend. We hope you're doing well. The Shire Crier says, great discussion. Thanks for your positive feedback, friend. That's encouraging. I enjoyed it as well, and we really appreciate our guests who are linked in the description. And Brian Stevens says, great debate. Thanks for that positive feedback as well, Brian Stevens. Now, I want to let you guys know, we want to know what you're like pumped about in terms of like topics, things that you want to like see on the show. I want your hand to be on the steering wheel. And so that for me is like, we want you to feel like listened to, and that we actually like host things on what you'd actually enjoy. And so that feedback, we do appreciate that, you guys, as you let us know. And so one of the things is that I think about putting out a survey, but I know this is a small percent, because I know 95, 99 probably % of you would be honest on a survey. But I worry that if I put out a survey and I was like, what topics do you want to see? I worry that there might be some zealots that would like find a way to vote for the survey 20 times and then be like, oh, I want to see this topic really bad. And, you know, but I'm maybe going to put together a survey and put it out. And like I said, I know 99% of you would not do that. So please don't be insulted. I'm only trying to insult the 1%. But I think there are like 1% of people I think would probably try to abuse the survey. But thanks for being with us. Squatch Talk, thanks for your encouragement. Says, I want your channel to grow. Well, thank you. It's a community effort. And so we just appreciate you guys. Like, I always tell people, it's like, because that's the like weird thing about hosting a debate channel is it's like I never really get to, unless I could debate on the channel, but then I could put my views forward. But otherwise, it's kind of like, it feels truly like a community channel, because it's like I never, and I promise to keep this promise, will never put out a video that's like, hey, here's my position on this, and, going like partisan on you guys. I promise we will always be a non-partisan channel as long as this channel exists. Lewis Barnett, thanks for being with us, says, thank you for having this debate on a weekend so I could watch it live. Much love from the UK. Thanks, Lewis. It's appreciated. It seriously means a lot to me. I love when we hear from people from across the world who are like, oh, I listen and it's fun. That's seriously encouraging to me. It's so cool that people from around the world enjoy it, and it's just like, it feels good. It's just like, hey, thanks so much for hanging out with us, whether you be American or from England. I'm trying to think of like the most common. So we have the US, we have most of our viewers even on the podcast too, and that makes sense because most of the people hear about the podcast from here, YouTube. But Canada is another big one. England's usually a big one. We have viewers in Australia, and thanks for hanging out with us and watching us from those countries as well. And so thanks, SlamRN, who says, don't forget to hit like on the way out. Thank you for that. And Diverse Bakery, thanks so much. We appreciate you being with us. And so, yeah, I'm pumped though, you guys. Thanks, Tiger Jin, for your positive feedback. Says, I love that you genuinely keep this platform neutral. Thank you for that. That seriously means a lot. And that's the plan forever, folks. If I ever want to do a channel where I like share my views or like try to make a case for something, I'll either be debating on this channel where there's a moderator so it's fair and balanced, or I'll just start a different channel where I might, eventually share my own views. But I love this. Doing this channel is so fun that I don't feel compelled to start my own channel in terms of like, trying to put out my own views. I think more power to those people who do. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, obviously. But for me, I love doing modern day debate and moderating and all this. And so just getting to hang out with you afterwards in the chat too. Thank you guys for your support. Seriously, do appreciate it. Now we are considering, I'm hoping to hear back from Dr. Craig. I had reached out to William Lane Craig about a potential debate between Richard Carrier. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. And I'm starting to kind of be like, I don't know if that's actually going to happen. But that would be our potential next Kickstarter event. And let's see. Very funny, Master Optics. And but yeah, I'm pumped, you guys. NZ Native says New Zealand present. Thanks so much for being with us. Oh, and then Anti-Kathira, thank you so much, says Luxembourg here. That is really cool. Thanks for, it's awesome. I love just reading that. That's so cool. And let's see. Daver says Bart K versus vegan gains on the vegan diet. I don't know who Bart K is, but I'm like, huh? I don't know, maybe. I'm open to it. But yeah. Oh, Sephirin from Ireland. That is so cool. Thanks so much for being with us, my friend. And thanks for staying up late with us. And Tiger Jin, thanks for your feedback. And then CEP2, and then Plet. Thank you for being with us, my dear friend. We hope you're doing well. And yeah, we are excited, you guys. I am just pumped. You guys see this debate poster right here. This is going to be epic. It's on Friday night, so hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and that way you will get a notification for it, as it's going to be epic live on Friday night. Talk about a Friday night party. It's going to be fun, you guys. I'm pumped for it. And so that's the one nice thing is like, hey, like we're enjoying each other's company, and you guys make it fun. So thank you guys for making it enjoyable. Thanks. Matthew Simard says, thanks for your dedication. Thank you. That seriously means a lot. I love that positive feedback. It seriously does encourage me, you guys. I love it. It means a lot. And so, yeah, I'm pumped though, you guys. I have to tell you that Worldview Detective, thanks for your question, said, what would be the topic for Craig versus Carrier? It was going to be whether or not God exists, because they've never debated that topic, but they have debated the resurrection. And so I'm hoping, I'm a little surprised I wouldn't hear back. Like I told them, like, hey, you're like, yeah, like it'd be awesome, but I don't know. Maybe they're just late. Who knows? Jai Ram, thanks for being with us, my friend. We hope you're doing well. Hannah Anderson, a longtime friend of the channel. Thank you, Hannah, for being a supporter. Means a lot. And yeah, I'm pumped though, you guys, just that. I was, what I was going to tell you before is I was a little, when we first started the podcast, I was afraid. I was like, is this ever going to like have anybody like check out the podcast? And so, I was uploading the podcast for a while, and I started, I think it was in June. So it's already been what would that be? No, I think I started back in like April or May, maybe May. So what would that be? That'd be like 7 months plus another 2. So, 9 months or so. March, April. Yeah, so about 9 months. I'm like, wow, May is kind of coming quick here, pretty fast. But yeah, I have been so encouraged. So thank you guys so much for your support of the podcast. And I would encourage you guys, we put out some epic ones. Let me read you some of the titles, because one of the things that you might not know is that our podcast, we also have like the new debates that we have, but you might not know that we also put debates in there that are Throwback Thursday debates. So on Thursday, we always put a new debate in there, or you could say kind of it's new to podcast. We put that in there each Thursday. And I want to tell you, the last several that we've been putting in there have just been really juicy ones. And so I want to read you some of the titles. So it's been a long time, almost 3 years. What has it been? Yeah, it's been about 2.5 years since we had Paulogia on. And so we have a debate with Paulogia versus Samuel Nassan. That I just put on the podcast on Thursday, and that was a great debate. Like, they were both really well prepared. They were both just friendly fellows. And so I highly encourage you, check that out on the podcast. The Throwback Thursday debates on there are always fun, as we try to like go back for like some of the more fun, juicy debates. And it's just convenient, because if you don't have YouTube Premium, but you still want to listen to modern day debate without using your data, it's nice that it's like, hey, you can just download, for example, I'm looking at the last 3. The last 3 were epic. The last 3 debates that we uploaded onto the Modern Day Debate podcast were Mark Drisdale versus Darth Dawkins. That was a fun one. And also on Throwback Thursday, I mentioned the debate on whether or not Jesus rose from the dead between Paulogia and Samuel Nassan. So that was all the way back on September 13th, 2018, when we originally aired that debate. So that was a while back. And also exciting, though, we just released this one. This is even more juicy, you guys. Just the juiciness just keeps going up. Is the religious text of ISLAM dangerous. And that was against Nadir Ahmed and then Apostate Prophet. That was a controversial and fun debate, you guys. And so that's another one on the podcast that we just uploaded. So that was a really fun one. And so, yeah, I would just say, I hope that's valuable to you for long trips. Like maybe maybe it's a long commute in the mornings, or maybe you're going on a road trip or whatever. Or maybe it's like while you work out or while you're cleaning the house. It's just nice to have something to listen to. And so that's one cool thing. So I've been, like I said, just thanks for your support of the podcast, you guys. That means a lot. And then thanks for your ratings too. Megan Satana said, are you planning any future Kickstarter debates? Yeah, that's the only one that I mentioned is the only one that I think might happen. And now I'm starting to doubt it. I was like really thinking it would, but usually I could have sworn that usually like Reasonable Faith would get back to me faster. Brooke Chavez, thanks. Chavez, thank you for being with us. Says, can I be a moderator here since I'm a mod on Twitch too? Yes, you can, Brooke, and thank you for being willing to do that. The only, the only trick is, let's see, you could say the only thing we ask of you is to do a favor by always wiping out any sort of hate speech. We always want people to feel welcome, and so we're like, gosh, if we have hate speech going on in the chat, that's not going to make people feel welcome. So we do. That's the only thing that we're hard on, where we just don't give a warning. We're just like, sayonara, baby. And otherwise, even when Brenton is in the chat and he's like, man, you guys got to try out this new type of soy. And we're like, okay, Brenton, seriously? But we still let him say it without erasing his messages. So, yeah, but we're excited. And so we love Brenton. Brenton, I'm pumped about the possibility. I told you guys that there might be a debate between Brenton, and it's not confirmed, but we might have a future debate with Brenton against a big name YouTuber that he debated in the past, actually. So it wouldn't be that surprising. Well, it's surprising, it's cool, it's epic, but it's interesting because they have a history, you could say. And Sabin, thank you for being with us. Am I pronouncing it right? Let me know. But we're glad you're here, Sabin. And so thank you guys so much for all of your support. We love you guys. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Brooke, for your help moderating. And, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Twitch chat, that I've been so behind. Oh, Brooke said, are you going to get emotes for us here in Twitch? Let me figure out how to do that. I heard that it's a cool trick you can do in Twitch. And so thank you for reminding me about that. And it also reminds me that, hey, yes, you guys, I am excited, and I appreciate you guys. Let's see. Larry Letts says, if I come on for a debate as Let's Farm, you should mod that account too. It's the one I use on Discord. Thanks for letting me know about that, Larry. Just remind me, and I'm happy to. And Steve McRae Manager says, G-Man? I don't know what that means. But Steve, I highly doubt you're Steve McRae's manager. But that's so funny. I'm sure you're teasing him. But thanks, CEP2 Plet, who says, thanks, James. Thanks so much, friend. That means a lot to me. I appreciate your kindness. Daver says, Jay Dyer versus Cosmic Skeptic on atheism or veganism. That'd be epic. I mean, if Jay Dyer wanted to do veganism, I'd be open to it. I don't know if he does that topic. But thanks, Sam Arenz, who says, have a great night, pal. Appreciate it. You too. And Soldier of Science says, if I have a great idea for a website for you guys, imagine a site where your users have an avatar that can join into different rooms and debate with each other while watching debates. That would be epic. I noticed that during the debates, like so many people are debating each other in the chat. That's awesome. But yeah, I'm pumped, you guys. I'm excited. Oh, and then that reminds me. I almost forgot. Our Twitch, I have just posted our Twitch in the chat. And so if you prefer Twitch over YouTube, that is pinned at the top of the chat. And so that way, like, we're pumped. We love partying on Twitch as well. And so Leonardo Chetri, thanks for being with us, my dear friend. And Soldier of Science says, and people can actually purchase items to smash each other with. That's funny. That would be epic. Foreign objects. That's right. That's funny. Did we get to 150 likes? Because I want to show you these shoes. I am excited about them. We're close, you guys. We're at 147 likes. Roy Lindsay says, Jay Dyer versus Chi Jump. That would be epic. I don't know if Jay Dyer, do they get along or do they not? I can't remember. Did they have like a fight or something? But Lewis Barnett says, I'd love to hear a debate about whether gambling should be legal. That would be cool. That's a fun debate. It's an interesting, like, ethical topic too, about like the potential of like, one, you obviously want to reduce harm, and that's why you're considering making it illegal. And then also you're trying to like not infringe on like liberties too. So that's also another like ethical argument, the opposite direction. So that's cool. Brooke Chavez says, Twitch is very chill and laid back. I am glad to hear that. Yeah, it is like kind of like it's like a more like, you're able to read the chats, because once in a while on the YouTube channel, the chat is flying so fast that you can't even read the messages because it's so fast. But Roy Lindsay says, I was just watching that dumpster fire from a few months ago. Both Jay and T Jump were terrible. I don't want to slam them when they're not around. But Worldview Detective said, they debated on Killstream a while back. You can find it on T Jump's channel. That sounds interesting and juicy. I think I had seen that before. And then, let's see. Alex Gordon says, Tom and Jay don't like each other, but they'd probably debate again. Hey, maybe. Yeah. That's thanks for letting me know that, by the way, Alex Gordon. And good to see you, Alex Gordon. 152 likes. I'm stoked, you guys. Okay, I'll show you these shoes. Because I know that you guys are nasty foot fetish type people. But I love these shoes. I'm usually like a cheapskate. As in, like, one time Walmart had a sale of shoes on dollars on sale for $3 a piece. And I bought like 10 pair. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, $3 for sneakers. You know, it was like, I jumped at it. And they're not the most comfortable. But, you know, my girlfriend Frankie, she's super sweet, and she was like, James, like, you should get some comfortable running shoes, and that way your feet feel good while you're running and they don't feel like they're in pain. Because some Walmart shoes aren't super comfortable, but, you know, most of them are. But long story short, basically Frankie bought me these. That's her name. She's really sweet. And so she bought me these nicer shoes that are comfy, and it's just like, oh, I love them. So if you have a foot fetish, here, there you go. But thank you, Louis Preciado. Thanks so much for your super chat, my friend. Says, do you think you could get Professor Dave back? I think it's possible, but Professor Dave is looking for like big fish, like big influencers, and it's tough to find. It's tough to find too many. But let me look. I'm sure we could find somebody, because that would be fun. So I'd be open to that. That'd be cool. And I'm excited about it. And yeah, that's a possibility. But I remember, because so I'd asked him, a few names, and he's like, I'm looking for like kind of like those bigger debates. And so, which totally makes sense. It's like, hey, I don't blame you. Like, that makes sense. And so, let's see. Alex Gordon, thanks for your kind words. Says, good to see you, James. Great debate as usual. Appreciate that, friend. And let's see. Oh, man, you guys are so funny. Leonardo Chetri, thanks for your kind words about those shoes. Appreciate that, buddy. And let's see. Megan Satanas, thanks for saying, I need a pair of shoes in that style. It's nice of you. But yeah, I appreciate you guys. Megan Satanas prefers them a little more girly. Yeah. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Thanks for all your love and support. I love you guys. Thank you guys for making this fun. It's always a blast. I just love doing this. And so thank you guys so much for all of your support. Thanks for everything, everybody. And we were excited. We might have a debate on Monday. That one I'm still waiting to hear back. And then, as mentioned, though, this debate on Friday, it's going to be epic. So we're excited to see you for that one. It's going to be a big Friday night party. And so thanks, everybody, and hope to see you again. We hope you keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Take care, everybody.